I'd now like to introduce Owen Hogg. Owen has worked for the MARS Pet Food at their plant in Wodonga for the past 30 years and is currently the environmental manager. He was named, and we're talking about celebrating here, he was named the New South Wales Office of Environment and Heritage Sustainability Champion for 2014. Also in that year, MARS Petcare Wodonga won the New South Wales Green Globe Awards for waste and recycling with their Zero to Landfill project. Owen has been recognised globally within the MARS business for his commitment to their global sustainable in a generation targets. This culminated in Owen receiving the Global Make a Difference Award in Washington DC for the Shreddy Kruger product recycling machine, which was built from recycled machinery and plant, and Owen will be talking about that in part. So please welcome Owen Hogg, Environmental Manager, MARS Pet Food.
Okay, with MARS Petcare, we don't talk a lot about climate change or global warming. We prefer to call it sustainable in a generation, and they deliver that globally across their sites worldwide. MARS sets some fairly severe targets. So what we've got up here is on water, energy and waste lines. They set some fairly harsh targets for us to meet globally in all their sites. And our targets go out to 2040. So our first really hard one that they gave us was by 2015. They asked us to be landfill free on all sites. I'm proud to say that we've done that and delivered that one, and I'll talk a bit more about that today, but just to give you a little insight into some of the other targets that we do, out to 2040, the target is to be zero carbon emissions. We've already achieved that in our US plants, and a bit of an example on that is they put in, I think it was about 118 wind turbines across a 25,000 acre property. MARS just funded that, so it goes back into the grid to offset the carbon emissions for all of their US plants. So that's one that's delivered. I would say that by 2020 we'll have something like that in Australia to do all of our national ones out here. So we have plants in Wodonga, Bathurst, Wyong, Wacol and Ballarat. So we'll put in some type of energy project that will do that, and we've done a lot of small stuff around the place. Like MARS has got in Wodonga we already have the solar plant in there, but we could end up doing wind farm or something like that here that will offset for the whole of the state, the Australia. What I'm going to talk about today is how we dealt with this problem. And if you look at this, I don't think there'd be any businesses that could be proud of this. But we were sending actually 3 loads of that. That is actually one of our trucks in 2005 going out to landfill. We were doing that 3 times a day. It's about 4,500 tonnes a year we were putting into landfill. So when I was given the task of getting to zero, that was fairly confronting for me, and it was fairly confronting for everybody else that worked on that plant. To make it a little bit more interesting, the actual target said zero manufacturing. But in Wodonga, we've got about 550 people in there, and a fair few of those work in the office, and I couldn't change that and say to the office people, it's okay for you to put your rubbish into landfill, but you guys in the factory, you can't do it. So what I made a decision straight up was the whole site would be zero landfill. It just increased the pressure a little bit. How did we go about doing this? I got a team of guys that I took off the floor and out of the office, and we called them the tip turkey team. And for 10 days, I had people on site weigh this and record where it come from, and then we sorted through it. And what we found after 10 days was about 75% of this that we were sending to landfill, we already had the facilities in place and opportunities to actually get it out of landfill straight up. It was just a no-brainer. It was just one of those things where you just have to sort at the source before you throw it into one common bin. The rest of it we set about by just getting some plans in place. It doesn't really come up at the top. Graph up the top there was just our sort of like a timeline of what we had to do and when we had to do it to deliver this. But of the 4,600 tonnes, we eventually defined waste streams for every one of those materials, and it wasn't just one answer. There's 1,000 problems, 1,000 different solutions type thing. We couldn't just stop with one idea to fix it. One of our big things though, we were sending anywhere between 20 and 30 tonne of waste product each week. Now that was in a recyclable tin plate can, and the product inside it was able to be rendered back down into a meat meal for a fertiliser. The problem we had being in one can, you couldn't do that. So we had to set about to get a machine to separate that out. You could buy one of these off the shelf for about $750,000. At the time we were building a plant in Bathurst, and I didn't have this project in the cab. And when I asked one of the directors, how do I do this? He said, get creative. So creative we did. Between my boss and I had a fair bit of support from my direct manager. I got onto Gumtree and I started looking for bits and pieces of machinery that I could pick up, and ended up flying over to Kalgoorlie, and I found an old shredder that they'd been using for a tyre shredder. I did some trials over there and I bought that back. I liked what I saw after the trials. I bought that back, and from there we started to build a machine out of second-hand bits of kit that had been parked up, and hence Shreddy Kruger. And what it does, it just rips apart the cans. I got an olive washer out of an old olive orchard. I modified it, and it actually washed the tin plate and the meat off, and allowed me to send meat to render, tin plate, to recyclers. We did 1,040 tonnes in the first 12 months of that machine. I think I ended up maybe about $115,000, $120,000. But we built that machine and it took it out. The other big thing that we did was that we were faced with getting to zero landfill was a cultural change within the plant. When you've got 600 workers, some of them had been there up to 40 years at the time, very hard to change their mindset. So we built a big jigsaw puzzle, and it probably took up a few metres square on the floor in the canteen, gave everybody a piece of that jigsaw puzzle. And what it was to demonstrate that if everybody came in together and worked together and put their part of the puzzle together, we can achieve it. But if one or two people didn't come together with that, you're always going to have a hole in the process. And it was the first lot of mindset that we did to get people to actually see that we needed to do it as a whole. And I'm proud to say now that pile of rubbish is not there, and makes me very proud to work for MARS with those goals. Thank you.